I know some of you are going, didn't we already do this lesson? No, this is part 2. This is a 12-point lesson, and I didn't really want to rush through 12 points in the first half. So we're in Jeremiah 6:16, where he says, ask for the old paths, walk in them, and you'll find rest for your soul. And so what we're going to do, about the same introduction we had in the first lesson, we choose to treasure the original. We want to value the original. We believe the original blueprint was the absolute best there is, and the mind of man cannot improve upon the mind of God. And it can't, if you ask me. So we're going to retain the standard of sound words, as Paul told Timothy. That's what we want to do. We want to get back to that book, chapter, and verse foundation and cherish what was originally given to us rather than creating some variation of what was given to us. We don't want to reinvent Christianity. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. The Christianity God delivered to us will do everything God wants it to do. And so that's our aim, is to practice exactly that, not a later version. So it is the ancient paths that we are at. So if you ever wonder, why does this church never change? Why don't they do this or that? Because the church down the road is doing it. The answer is right here in front of you now. We don't change because we're looking for the original path, not something new and modern and updated. Now, not everybody wants it. I understand that. Fortunately or not fortunately, I'm not sure how to say this, but in our society, our community, there are hundreds and hundreds of variations of so-called churches that call themselves Christian, and you can have any variation you want out there. It's there. You just got to go looking for it, and you don't have to go looking very far. Just ask ChatGPT, and he'll tell you what's available and where it's at and what they do, and you'll get all your answers up front. So we believe that the ancient paths are still priceless. So let's get on to point number 7, our distinctiveness. And we are distinctive. I like that phrase. Real quick little short side story. I have a friend that's a Pentecostal preacher. He's UPC, to be precise. He doesn't like to be called something different. I called him Assembly of God once, and he said, oh, no, I'm not. So they have their little differences too. And he said, you got to listen to so-and-so's sermon. I sent you a link to it. He said, now, be aware. We have our distinctiveness. But I think if our distinctiveness doesn't offend you, you'll like the lesson. And he was right. It was a real good lesson. But they have their distinctiveness, and we have our distinctiveness. And we want to protect that. We want to value that. We want to hold on to that. And we want to let it protect us. So we're going to follow Ecclesiastes 12:13. The whole duty of man is to fear God and keep His commandments. That's what we want to do. We want to be, as Matthew 7:21 says, it's he who does the will of the Father who enters the kingdom. And what's the goal for us, brethren? We want to do what when this life is over? Enter the kingdom of heaven, right? We want to walk that street of gold, or however you imagine it. We want to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. That's what this is all about. Now, you can go do other things in your private time. I'm not going to argue with that. But when it comes together as a church and a church family and spirituality, that's what it's all about. We're supposed to be distinctive. We're supposed to be different. Or as Paul called it, he's a peculiar people, zealous for good works. So we don't compromise our distinctiveness. That's not good. Once you start giving in, it just keeps going and going and going. So let me use a political analogy, and I won't get deep into this. I don't want to get in trouble. But there was a little meme that came across Facebook the other day and said if JFK were to come back today, he would be a conservative. Now, what happened? Kennedy was a liberal of his day, right? But the liberals of our day went a little further, then they went a little further, and they went a little further. And how many of you know Democrats that said, they left me, I didn't leave them? How did that happen? It did not happen overnight. It happened because they started compromising their distinctiveness. And they made one little change because they thought it was good. And made another little change. And made another little change. And now they've made changes so far away that it's not uncommon once a week to read about somebody who says, hey, we're done with that party. We're going over to a different one. That's what happens when we start to compromise. Even if it's a little step, it is a step. And that's why we hang on to our distinctiveness. So our beliefs, they're not just preferences. They're the ancient wisdom of God handed down to us and this restoring that New Testament Christianity. That's what we want to be known for. We don't want to be known for being the most energetic, lively, loud, entertaining church in the community. Again, I really don't think we compete there. We want to be known for the most Bible-thumping church. I have a little story. It comes just outside of the back of Arkansas where the Baptist church was looking to hire a new preacher. New preacher came in, tried out. They thought he preached too much Bible. Somebody said, that's what we need. They said, if you want more Bible, go around the corner to the Church of Christ and they'll give you Bible. Oh, yeah. That's the reputation I want. That's what I want to be known for. That's what I want us to be known for. If you want some good book, chapter, and verse foundation, head on down to the Camden Road Church of Christ or Highway 79, whatever we call ourselves. I don't even know what we call ourselves. All roads don't lead to heaven, folks. And nobody really believes all roads lead to heaven. So I want you to jealously guard the narrow way. Not because we're better, not because we think we're special, but because Jesus gave us the narrow way. And nobody can give us a better way than the way Jesus gave us. I want you to treasure it like we used in the first sermon, like that family heirloom. Hang on to it. And don't let anybody change it. So our local commitment. Let's talk about our local work. We're not exactly sure how the work began because it goes back to 1914. If I'm doing math right on the top of my head, that's 111 years ago. That's a long time ago. That's the earliest documentation we can do about the Lord's Church in Pine Bluff. And we can't even tell you who the preacher was that came through town and brought it or whoever brought it. We just know that we can document it back to 1914. If you have a printed copy of our directory, all the local history going back to 1914 is in there for those of you who may be curious. If you don't have a copy, let me know and I'll get you that history for you. So what we had were way back there people of faith that wanted to do this one thing. We want to be as much as humanly possible the exact church Jesus built. And we believe His Word is ageless. It's not ever changing. It's not changing with every group and every fad and every trend. It was once for all delivered, and heaven and earth will pass away before His Word passes away. So our local mission, our assignment, so to speak, is to continue that. Now, I think that's kind of neat. When you think back 111 years, there have been people doing this in Pine Bluff. You know, some communities don't have that. There's some communities that don't have a good old Bible thumping book, chapter, and verse Church of Christ in them. So we're following a pattern that's 2,000 years old, not because it's old, but because it's timeless. It is timeless and priceless. There's nothing new under the sun. Humanity's basic needs doesn't change, and God gave us the best thing. Now, obviously, that doesn't make us popular, and it's not easy. If it's easy, you're probably on the wrong path. Let me say that one more time. If it's easy, you're probably on the wrong path because Jesus said straight and narrow is the way. Jesus said take up your cross and follow Him. If it's easy, you might want to back up and go, what am I really doing here? So what we have done, we have received a torch that has somehow been passed down since 1914 all the way to today. We are still holding that same torch. And one of these days, we're going to pass on that torch. We're going to pass on something. My passion and desire is that what we do pass on is that same solid, nothing but the book. Let's just do what the New Testament pattern says. Let's follow it. And let another generation hold that torch for a while. And then there'll come a time where they'll pass on. Because we're going to pass it on. You're guaranteed to die sooner or later. And so that's our local commitment. We want to be very careful about drifting. Hebrews 2:1 says, give more earnest heed lest you drift away. And most people leave because of drifting. Now and then there's an issue and somebody gets their feelings hurt and they leave because of other things. But most people, you know how it goes. You've had somebody been attending services for a long time, they miss a service, and you think, well, nothing about that. Everybody misses now and then. But they thought, well, I missed once, it didn't hurt. They show back up next Sunday, maybe 2 or 3 more Sundays, and then they miss it another time or two. And of course, they got an excuse. They were out of town, they were sick, they were this or that. And then they missed 3 or 4 times. And they just slowly drift out of the picture. And then one day we're standing back before you going, hey, you remember brother or sister so-and-so? You go, yeah, what happened to them? I don't know. They just drifted off. And they ended up somewhere else doing something, and maybe nowhere else. We have to be very diligent. Hebrews 11:6 said God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. So drifting, one of the problems is it feels kind of ordinary. It feels kind of safe. You didn't feel really good. You stayed home. You were sick. You were sniffly. You stayed home. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that, right? And then one day you decide, well, I'm not pumping on all 8 cylinders, or I'm not on all 4 burners, or whatever little analogy you like. I think I'll just watch it on live stream today. Just stay on my couch in my pajamas. I have a love-hate relationship with live stream. I don't want to quit it because I know we have people who cannot get out, and I want to quit it because we got some lazy folks that stay at home and drink their coffee when they could get up and get here, but it's just easier to stay at home. And I don't know how to keep it and get rid of it both. If you can figure that one out for me, I would love to hear the answer. But it's this is part of the drifting. And early on, there's nothing really, really overt. There's really nothing big you can point to and go, well, that's wrong. But eventually it drifts off into that, but you drift off so far, nobody's watching anymore. Sometimes the drifting is an attempt to be relatable. This is a tough one to wrestle with. I do have to learn how to communicate with the people that are 40 and below. And obviously I'm not 40 and below. It's a challenge. There's a different wavelength of something going on there. I'm studying that, incidentally. I'm working on that one. But the new communication cannot compromise the Word of God. If it needs to be said in a little different framing, I'm good with that. But it cannot compromise the Word. And here's what happens, is in an attempt to be more relatable to a younger generation, a lot of times they allow the compromising of principles and scriptures and practice in the name of being relatable, and the drifting starts. That's all Satan needed. He just needed enough to get you to take your rope off the pier, and the drifting will take care of itself. Relating's good, but it must be based in book, chapter, and verse. Let's read this one. We had almost quoted it, but I want you to go to Galatians 1:6-8. I forget some people can't read up here. Our eyes vary. But what I want you to do, as I read it, I'll probably read through verse 9. I want you to feel your emotional response to what Paul's writing. I want you to feel, does it make you bristle a little bit? Does it make you think, ooh, Paul? Or does it make you feel something positive? Paul wrote, I'm amazed. You are so quickly deserting him who called you by the name of grace, by the grace of Christ, to a different gospel, which is really not another. There are some who are disturbing you and want to distort the gospel of Christ. But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to what we have preached to you, he is to be accursed. As I've said before, so now I say again, if anyone preaching to you a gospel contrary to what you received, he is to be accursed. Now, what'd you feel? Did you feel like that? Ooh, Paul is hard. He's too strict. He's too abrasive. Wait a minute. Why don't we just naturally go with love on that one? So what if I catch a youngster, a grandkid? I'll just make this one up. I have not done this with a grandkid. I haven't caught him here. I'm just making an example, okay? They're good. They're clean. What if I caught him with a pack of cigarettes? And I started going, you don't need to be doing that. That is bad for your health. And it's going to take you down a road you don't want to go down. And you're going to be coughing and hacking. No, we're not doing that. And I was admonishing. I was rebuking. I was in their face. What am I trying to do? Am I being mean? Am I being too restrictive and too harsh? Am I being judgmental? Or am I being a loving grandparent that has experience and knows? And then I'm going to tattle on them. You guarantee, this is a warning, guarantee I'm tattling on you. I'm telling your mama. You really upset me. I'm telling your daddy on that one. Because we all know that tobacco's an ugly road for you. It's not a healthy thing. But what I'm saying is an admonishment doesn't always mean somebody's being mean. It doesn't always mean they're being judgmental and harsh. Sometimes we need to hear some things and we need to be jealous for the original. And I am jealous for the health and protection of my grandkids. And I don't want to see them wander off into something. And so what I'm saying is when Paul says this, if you're leaning toward the liberal side of things and the drift looks good, you needed to hear that. Because Paul said it's not going to do you any good. It's going to hurt you in the long run. And so Paul steps in with love and jealousy for those Christ died for. And it's really a positive passage. But if you get up in your feelings, feel hurt about it, there needs to be a little recalibration. Autopilot just isn't going to work. We got to take the bull by the horns. We got to get a hold of the steering wheel. We have to intentionally stay on course because we are trying to grow the original seed. Brother D. Bowman used to say it this way. It's a great analogy. I've used it many times. This will be a reminder for some of you, brand new for some of you. But he said, the way we play baseball today is not the way the original game was played. It is totally different. Well, there's a lot of differences. He said, what if you wanted to restore the original game of baseball? What would you do? You want to play it the way they played it back in the 1800s. Well, you would go back to the 1800s. You'd get a rule book about the 1800s. You would find out about the size of the field, the placement of plate, how high the pitcher's mound is, and all of those things. You know, there is a league that actually plays original baseball because they followed the original rule book. But it's not modern baseball. Modern baseball is a totally different thing. If we want to play original Christianity, then we have to plant the original seed. And guess what we have? We have the original seed. We call it the Holy Bible. And all we have to do is open it up and study to show ourselves approved to God. Work need not be ashamed. And we can do that and protect ourselves from drifting away. But the temptation to drift is strong, isn't it? It is really strong. Because we like to fit in. We like to be popular. We like to be accepted by the community. And those are just natural urges. But we have to stay on our toes. Because I don't care if the whole community says, man, y'all are one of the best churches I've ever seen in my life. In the end, if Christ doesn't say, well done, thou good and faithful servant, that reputation among men does not mean a thing. Think Matthew 7:21 through 23. We cast out demons, we prophesied, we did many wonders. And he said, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. Doesn't matter what everybody else thinks. Need to be clear and yet respectful. Joshua 24:15. He said, choose you this day who you serve, whether your gods your fathers served in Egypt or the other side of the river, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Can't make anybody else follow Christ. We want them to. Joshua knew where he stood. I really want you to know where you stand. Because if you really know where you stand and why you stand on this book, chapter, and verse foundation, then I don't have to worry a whole lot about you drifting off. Now, we still got to work on it because that temptation's there for all of us all the time. But it has a whole lot less sway when we know why we stand, where we're standing. And let me restate that again. It's because there's no better place to stand. He gave us the original. Every man-made version is less than the original he gave us. You'll never find anything better than his original book, chapter, and verse. So we're a rare option for hungry people, and we want to stay this option. I don't want us to drift off into any form of liberalism, and then there not be a congregation in Pine Bluff for people who really just want to draw near to God and practice book, chapter, and verse, who want to honor that original treasure that was given to us. And like I said, there are communities that don't have that. And I know unless you've traveled a lot, you don't know this, but there are literally some states up north that if they have 2 or 3 congregations that are what we are, they're lucky. There are people that have to drive 2 hours if they want to worship as we worship. Now here in the South, it's like, well, there's one on every corner, right? But not everywhere. And if we don't fight to remain that, I want you to think just about Pine Bluff for a moment. And think about what we call the sound congregations. If you know our community, the next question I want you to ask is, how long are they going to remain? I mean, just continue to exist. Because old age is getting to them. I'm not saying they're wrong or they're faulting. I'm just saying it happens. And one of these days they're going to shut their doors because they don't have the manpower, the money. Are we looking at having to shut our doors someday? Now, right now, absolutely not. Absolutely, right now we're in good shape. Try to project 25 years from now. Archer's 14. I want you to think of him as being 40. I think that's kind of a cool thought. What's the congregation going to be here when Archer's 40 and Madeline's 38? Yeah, I did my math wrong on purpose. You're not supposed to pick on women's age, right? What's it going to be? After all of us who right now are the men of the congregation, we're just a photo on somebody's wall. And it's coming. That's what we want to continue. That's that torch we want to hand down. Is it going to appeal to everybody? Absolutely not. Most people don't want what we've got. And that's fine. If they don't like what we've got, that's good. They can go different place, find what they want. But we're going to be conservative on purpose. And as much as we can, we're going to steal that passion, that love, that desire for the original in younger hearts and pass it on and pass it on. And maybe one day when Archer's 67 and he gets to totter up to the podium, he'll have a grandkid sitting on the pew going, I want to be a preacher like Grandpa. And we'll get more generations. But only if we pass the torch correctly. It's exciting and scary at the same time, isn't it? Number 11, next to the last, we want a holy confidence. We don't want arrogance, of course. So we want to stand for the truth out of a love for God. We're not going to boast in anything except the cross of Christ. We want to boast in the scriptures, if you would. But without Jesus, we've got absolutely nothing. Now, we can put together a really good party group that'll carry us to the tombstone. But after the tombstone, without Jesus, when you stand at the judgment seat of Christ, you've got absolutely nothing. And so we continually humble ourselves and say, am I really surrendering to the Word? I mean, I know out of my mouth I can say the right things and I can tell people the right things so they would think I'm a good Christian. But really in the eyes of God, am I surrendering to the Word? That's the bottom line. That's your key point right there. We want to help others find that. We want them to have that holy confidence. And our 12th and final point, what torch will we pass on? An unaltered family treasure? I'm going to use that analogy again because I think it's so good. And I'm not going to tell you about the golden locks on the Pullman. You'll have to go back for the first one this time. I double-checked with Madeline. I said, you still wear KK's ring? Now, for those of you who don't know, KK was Mickey's mom. Of course, she passed when Madeline was about a year and a half, 2 years old. And not too long ago, Grandpa Benny, Paul, gave Matt a KK's ring. I said, you still wear it? She said, I wear it all the time. Now, that's it. It's an unaltered family treasure. And I don't think Matt is thinking, I'm going to take this to the jeweler. and I'm going to get it to cut these jewels. I don't like that part. I want some green emeralds in there. I don't think that's going to happen because when she looks at that ring, she thinks that's KK's ring, and she's going to preserve it. And one of these days, hard to imagine, but one of these days she's going to be 102, and she's going to have a grandbaby, and she's going to say, "I want to give you something special," and she's going to pass that ring on down. And if the proper training has been instilled, that great grandbaby, whoever gets it, is going to say, "I'll never change it. I want to cherish this and keep it just exactly like it is, because that was great great grandma KK's ring." You see what I'm saying? This is what we want, that unaltered family treasure. God gave it to the apostles. The apostles gave it to us. And we're not going to go edit it. We're going to follow it as close as we can. And so we're going to do that even now, 2,000 years later. And then we're going to hand that off to the next generation. And to do it right, we have to be very proactive. We have to have a passion for this. It has to be that museum curator idea. We're going to keep it exactly like it was. So God knew what He was doing and what He wanted. Our goal is to honor that. A lot of modern options available. But we choose to be that group that is trying to be as Bible-centered as we can. We're not looking to change anything to a more liberal, progressive, whatever the term is. So we're conservative on purpose. We're supposed to be distinctive. We believe Jesus' word is ageless. It will never change. We don't want to just kind of let it roll on autopilot. That's not going to go the right way. We're going to be that rare option for people who really want God. Not just a bunch of fluff and stuff, but they really want it. And we're going to humble ourselves, and we're going to surrender ourselves to the Lord. We're going to be changed, transformed by the renewing of our mind, and then we're going to have that passion for passing on the original. Again, I'm going to leave you with this one. God knew what He was doing. He knew exactly what He wanted. And our goal is to give Him exactly what He wanted on His terms, in His way. So let me ask you, are you? Are you giving God what He wants on His terms and His way? If so, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. If not, it's time to make a change. If we can help you publicly, let us do so.